Hey there, I'm Brian Musser. I'm the Baptist Campus Minister at Drexel University, and we're with Mike Bates, who's a former Drexel student. Drexel is home of the Dragons, the most dominant mascot in all of NCAA sports, and we're going to be talking a little bit about student ministry and church planting. So, first of all, let's get Mike to introduce himself a little bit. Where are you from? How did you end up here? And just that kind of stuff.
So I am originally from Long Beach, California. I came here because I went to Drexel, and still here 2 years afterwards.
Before coming to Drexel, what was your church experience like?
I grew up in a Black Baptist church, contemporary for its times. We did some hymns, but not too much. It was mainly keeping up with the newer music, which back then was a Kirk Franklin, Hezekiah Walker, Yolanda Adams type thing.
Okay. And in that experience, was church planting something you heard of?
Not really. Just short answer is no.
Okay. If your church was involved in it at all, it didn't make it down to you?
My church raised money yearly for the Annie Armstrong Foundation, but it wasn't something we were directly involved in church planting. We supported something that was through NAM.
Okay, cool. And when you came to Drexel, moving from California to the East Coast, it was important for you to get plugged into a church, to maintain that church connection.
Correct.
And the church you ended up getting plugged into was Epiphany Fellowship.
Yes.
Okay. One, how did you get connected with Epiphany? What was your first impressions of it, and why did you stick around that particular church?
First experience, I have to tell the story because it shares some about the guy sitting across from me. We're at an event called Find a Church, where we're introing different churches for freshmen who don't know anything about the church landscape, and trying to get them to go to church. Musser says, if you're down with the hip and the hop, then Epiphany Fellowship is the place for you. So the first week I didn't go because I didn't know this guy at all, and he said if you're down with the hip and the hop, and that's automatically like he's crazy. But I decided to try it, and there's a couple things that really stuck out. One was the love that people showed over there. Like, I come from a tight-knit, close family. We hug everybody, even if we don't know how we're related. It was like, I assume this person's family, so we hug. And that's something that I experienced when I got there. Hey, you random stranger, you're here today. I want to show that I love you. Bring it in. Two, the music was different. It was a lot of what we call contemporary Christian songs, what you wouldn't hear in a Black Afro-Baptist, church. But it was put to a different beat that was just like unique. They blazed their own trail of contemporary. And then three was the preaching. Not only was it, solid and gospel-centered and foundational, but it was, the word they like to use at Epiphany is culturally relevant. And so it spoke to people who were of the hip-hop generation, and it spoke to people who were in North Philly, so that they can reach their demographic. And so those are the three things that really stuck out about Epiphany that that's why I decided to stay around.
Okay. Now, describe Epiphany a little bit with not just that, but like how old it is, where it is, what was some of the vision behind it, or,
Epiphany is going to be 8 years old in a week. So actually by the time you hear this, it'll probably already be 8 years old, but we can edit that.
Juan? No
I forgot the question.
Okay. Well, just describe Epiphany a little bit. Describe what is Epiphany and how it connects with church planting, and
Okay, yeah.
where it is, what its mission and vision are. Things like
Right. So Epiphany, the purpose statement is showing off the glory of Christ in every area of life, and so we get epiphany from that. Like I said, about 8 years old. It is connected with Acts 29 church planting movement, and specifically our founders, Dr. Eric Mason and William Branch Jr. They were trying to do a multi-ethnic, multi-generational church plant, but starting it in places where people were running from. They saw patterns of people getting out of the city and going to the suburbs, and therefore they wanted to do something of the opposite, get to where people were still at, where they had problems with, people well below the poverty line. They had problems with single-parent households and domestic abuse and violence and whatnot, and wanted to address those things through the power of the gospel. Did I leave anything out?
No. So Epiphany was a church specifically started about 8 years ago to invest in a specific community where people were hurting.
Correct.
And that was North Philly, up near Temple University,
Up near Temple.
17th and Diamond, in that location.
Correct.
And it was a year old when you first connected with it.
Right.
And when did you kind of go from somebody who attended to somebody who was kind of involved in the ministry? Or not when, but what was that like? Like, how did you go from being somebody who showed up at a church plant to somebody who helped out at a church plant?
Okay. So starting my sophomore year of college, I went to go sign up for ministries because I knew I had to be involved somehow. That was just part of my upbringing. You don't just show up, like you show up and do something. So the first thing I did was I signed up to be part of what was called building maintenance, when people needed like random like general contracting stuff done. I said, sure, I can help with that. I actually just did a couple summers of that while I was in high school. So I was like, I have a skill set that I've built up over the last couple of years to be able to help with that. That went through some transitions of leadership, and the guy over it was kind of old and it was wearing him down. Eventually, I met this new guy who had actually come from California, Long Beach to be specific, and he was involved with Campus Crusade. And as he wanted to start a college ministry through Epiphany, my name got brought up as a guy who would be helpful on the team, and that was the solidifying point. Everything I did with building maintenance was behind the scenes, and so no one had to really know who I was. As soon as I stepped into College Connect, it was something that was more visible. I had to be the one recruiting people, organizing people, and therefore my name and face got put out.
Okay. So being involved in College Connects at Epiphany, what did that practically mean? What did you do?
So I was on the core team of planning everything. Tommy was the visionary, and I was the hands-on, administrative, detailed guy. So we both prayed through vision. We wouldn't make decisions unless both of us were comfortable with it. But he had more vision stuff to go, that come to him that he would bring to the team. Whereas I would say, all right, based on that vision and what we have, I'd be the one to say, take the pieces of what we have in order to make the vision come to pass. So like I said, practically that would be finding current college students in order to say, all right, we need some more leaders over here. So recruiting in that sense, the organizing in the sense of, okay, we're doing events. I need to know which which ministries to talk about space reservations, to talk about where we can serve food, how we serve food, what kind of food, things like that. Talk about just getting people to show up at certain times in order to get a task accomplished.
Okay. And as you were involved, you were part of the leadership team and things like that. But I mean, it sounded administrative, very administrative with what you were doing, logistics, planning, details oriented, and things like that.
Correct.
Would you say you had any special training for that? Is it something that, did you have to go to a class? Did you have to get the hand of God, angels show up? How were you prepared?
I don't know that event planning is my spiritual gift, but at Drexel University, home of the Dragons, I was part of a couple different ministries, but it was during that time with Peace and Power Christian Fellowship and eventually Disciples Indeed that I got time just to learn how to do certain things. So it started off with, here are some flyers we need you to post up around campus, and that was my only job. I didn't have to plan events, I didn't have to do anything at the events, just put up flyers to say we're doing this thing. And after I showed consistency and was able to do that well, the responsibilities grew to the point that I was able to still be part of a team, but able to plan events and execute them.
Okay. And I'm gonna switch off a little bit, ask you a question that wasn't on the prompter, just to connect things a little bit. At Drexel, what degree did you get?
I got a degree in business administration with a concentration in finance.
Okay. And has there been like with what you do with church planting, with what you've done with Christian student organizations and things like that, what you do, has that connected much with like your overall sort of life talents and skills and things like that? Like, not on a practical level, but as like somebody with business administration and finance, do you use basically some of the similar skills that you've gone and got a degree for in your ministry stuff?
So the administration part of business administration, we spend a lot of time learning how to run a business, as in to be like an executive in a business, and or how to pitch it in such a way that someone wants to donate to the business that you are a part of. So we spend a lot of time doing presentations in that sense as well. So being second in command for these years, I've been the natural spokesperson for a lot of different events. So public speaking is something that I've had to grow comfortable with, and that was woven into the fabric of my degree. And then the finance and the numbers part, as the administrator for this ministry, I also handle the budgets. We come together and pray for vision with the budgets, but when it comes down to divvying out per event, when it comes down to expense reporting for the church at large, that's on me.
Okay. So this was not something strange from what you did every day. It was kind of a natural dovetail into.
It wasn't strange. I've sort of constructed this role so that it flowed with the things that I was already doing. Cool.
Okay, and establishing this ministry at Epiphany and connecting it to Drexel, your place you went to school, how did Epiphany connect to Drexel and specifically students at Drexel and things like that? Were you able to not just help out the church plant, but impact your campus with the help of that church plant?
The main thing I did for getting students connected to Epiphany was make sure they were able to get there. Um, so in a similar way, when we did the Find a Church event, Mustard either gave me a ride or gave me tokens so that I can show up. I either provided tokens or told them where they can get tokens if I didn't have the money to give them tokens, or I would call and organize people to come like pick up the students and take them to Epiphany, and that was the way I got those my two different worlds connected.
Okay. And like, I'm pretty sure you were the first Drexel student to just kind of commit to Epiphany, if I remember correctly.
The two other Drexel students were both Saturday scholars, which
Okay.
don't interact much with the rest of the campus. So, in the sense of a normal 5-year person who's there Monday through Friday, yes, I was.
Yeah, but 8 years later, like either current Drexel students or Drexel alum, what would you say is kind of the population at Epiphany?
About 25 to 30.
Okay. And many of those probably ended up there, maybe not your fault completely, but you had some influence in that?
I have directly had an influence on either inviting to or making sure they had a way to get to church 20 of those 25 to 30.
And probably maybe second tier, maybe throw in the other 5. But
Maybe, yeah.
except maybe Reggie, who was there as a high school student and he came from Epiphany to Drexel, not Drexel to Epiphany.
Correct.
Yeah, and we'll probably edit that out too. And just tell some stories about some of those students, because they're not just students who got connected to Epiphany, but there were students who connected to ministry in Epiphany.
So start with the first person I probably influenced to go there was Jake Washburn, who came from another church. I won't name this church, but he decided that the church wasn't evangelistic enough, and so he came to me and just asked if he can go to Epiphany to see what it was like, because he felt like God was leading him away from the church that he was currently attending. Jake came over and Jake just rode with me one time, came over and is like, I like it, can I do it again? Yes, of course. He joined. He immediately began with the photography ministry, which he was, he was like paparazzi sometimes at Drexel. That's what he did, and so that kind of thing naturally flowed for him. Eventually, he got connected with College Connect as well, so I used to work side by side with him. Now he's working on something even larger than college students, which is working on the area that we're in North Philadelphia and trying to do economic redevelopment. So getting people to not just survive, but to thrive in the area that we're at. So getting above the poverty line, not to just rent their homes, but to be able to own and things like that.
And just to fill in a blank there with Jake, Jake ended up with an entrepreneurial business degree from Drexel. So this economic development is something that, and he's at one time was working on a photography side business as well. So these are two things that are also personal connections in his life.
Yeah.
That Epiphany gave him a chance to minister in the areas. Anybody else?
My current roommate, Chris Akiranade, he was also at another church that was connected with the church he went to back in New York. He came to a couple events from Epiphany and decided that he liked the music, the music and the preaching. He just wanted to come through. He asked me if he could and what time the services were. I told him, of course, he could. Now he is playing keys on our worship band now. His girlfriend, Tashina Henry, was at, she wasn't at Find a Church, but she was looking around. We came in as freshmen together, and so she rode with me a couple times on the subway, to Epiphany, and then the ministry that she was a part of originally as a sophomore. She led other students to Epiphany as well. I don't want to say they didn't all stick. Never mind.
Yeah.
Edit that.
That's okay.
Who else? Ebony Thompson was another person who. Ebony was originally going to Covenant Fellowship because her discipler was going there, and she decided she wanted to go somewhere closer. She didn't ask me per se, like, can I go? But we had already developed a relationship, so like she knew what church I went to, and she felt comfortable showing up with me. Like, she showed up on a Sunday morning when I was getting students rallied together to go to church, and she's like, all right, I'm here, like, I need a ride too.
How about Quetta?
Monaquetta Hall. Yes, Quetta was also part of a different church. There's something, I don't remember all the details, so I can't share them. There's something that went down at that church that she didn't agree with. She was looking for something different. She asked me if she can go to Epiphany, and she didn't live on campus at that time, so I couldn't give her a ride, but I told her when to show up, and I told her we'd save a seat for her. Now she's involved as, oh wait, I didn't say who else was involved. Now she's involved in the church as well. Not just an attender, but a contributing member.
So when I asked you to do this interview, you probably, I think your response was, I won't have anything too profound to say. And I mean, that's perfectly fine. But basically, if you were to tell a college student what a church plant needs from them, what would it be?
Most church plants are looking for consistent contributing members. Most church plants don't have the numbers necessarily to do all the things that they want to do. So each person that's already involved, like 10% is handling 90% of the work, and so they want people to come through so that everyone doesn't have to be a generalist, and they can start to specialize in the things that that God has actually called them to do. And so just consistently showing up and inviting other people, that's the main thing I did, and that's seemed to work.
And this is going to be a new question as well.
Okay.
But do you think in a church plant like Epiphany, it was easier for you to find responsibility and leadership opportunities than maybe, say, in a more established church?
In the sense that I found them quicker, yes. I don't know if it's necessarily easier, because I still think in an established church that the gaps would still be there. But yeah, that it came a lot quicker in a church plant setting.
Okay. And another thing I heard in this conversation that I wanted to follow up on, that administrative role with College Connects, you said you were able to kind of design it towards your strengths.
Yes.
Do you feel like that was because you pretty much created the role? The role didn't exist before you, and
So there's in the same way that a lot of corporations have, there's a president, vice president, secretary, whatever, for a lot of organizations. Epiphany had a model so that there was an established leader and an admin. So the roles were there, but because this was a completely new ministry, we decided how we would play out these roles, and then other people came and fell along so that we could do the things that we decided we were, best at, and then other people to do the things that they're best at as well, and together we carry out the ministry.
Cool. And overall, how would you say that being involved in Epiphany Fellowship, a church plant that was a year old that you connected with, how has that affected your life?
So, to answer that, I need to get a little background. I'm not a visionary. I don't really like a lot of change. I'm a very consistent person that builds a lot of structure into my life. And yet, when I got to Philadelphia, I somehow seemed to become a part of things that were newish or growing. And so Epiphany was among the list of things that didn't always feel comfortable, but God was using to shape me and to take me out of my comfort zone and saying, you can take the managerial, administrative stuff that you naturally like to do and apply that to areas that you wouldn't normally think to do them in. And so that's been the biggest part, just growing and learning how to adapt to change and things that are new, and using the skill set that God's given to me in order to do those things.
Okay. I think that's it. Unless you have anything you want to say.
Long Beach, California, greatest city in the States. And go Dragons, go UCLA Bruins, and Chicago Bears.
Not the Bulls too?
It's not basketball season right now.